don't sing me love songs. You hardly talk to me anymore when I come through the door at the end of
This is a boo-hoo song for me. Do you all relate? You don't bring me flowers anymore. You don't tell me you love me. This song has a lot of meaning for me because it came out just about the time that that my husband and I divorced. And of course it was a shattering experience for me because it was all about betrayal. And I gotta tell you, I think I mentioned this last week, my rules about my relationships, especially marriage, said that you gotta care, you gotta show affection, you gotta bring the flowers, you gotta be loyal, and you gotta be honest. And most of those rules have been broken over those 17 years. And so this song came out and I would just, sit and go, it's done, it's over. See, the problem was, like Glenda said, I had a bunch of rules about relationships, especially in marriage, that just could not be enforced. No matter how much I wanted things to be different, I couldn't make them happen. I did not have the power to enforce my rules about what that relationship needed to look like. I didn't have any control, and trust me, I tried. I did not have any control over whether or not those rules were followed, were enforced. I tried, boy did I try, but it just didn't work. This shouldn't have happened. But guess what? It did. It did. All the rules were broken and something new emerged out of that. So the reason that I'm talking about this is because what I know is the rules that we have for ourselves, and in fact the rules in first grade, the rules in kindergarten have consequences. Now the rules in kindergarten say that if you do something incorrect, you might have to go sit in a chair someplace, or you might not get to go to recess. I don't know what the current rules are. You got to be benched. My poor Janie, she's 9, she comes home and says, oh, poor Louis, he got benched today again. Broke the rules, poor Louis. But so sometimes, we've got all these different rules. So just think about the rules that you have for yourself in your world, and think about the consequences of having those rules not followed. Sometimes they're big and sometimes they're not. But the kind of rules that we're talking about today here are those kind of rules that are deep. You can't pick them up and hold on to them. You really can't even read about them in the rule book because they're heart rules, right? They're rules that say betraying people is not good. That's one of my rules. Don't betray me. Don't lie to me. Don't be dishonest to me. I got a lot of rules about how I want the world to show up. But what I found out is things don't always go according to my rules and my expectations. Some of the rules are kind of easy and they don't make a difference. Like, don't wear white after Memorial Day. How many people in this room are wearing white? Yeah? Don't wear white after Memorial Day, right? Got to be proper, got to be stylish. Don't wear hair curlers out in public. Look at the Gloria Vanderbilt rule book and find out what you're not supposed to do and what you are supposed to do. Those are the kind of rules. And by the way, if you're highly attached to that, if you're highly attached to those kinds of rules, your life can be miserable. I remember one year someone from our community, actually Jeannie Chuba, who's now moved away but continues to come back on occasion to visit. She was having Thanksgiving at my mother's home with us. She called her mother before she came, and her mother said to her, well, I certainly hope you're not wearing trousers to Thanksgiving. And of course, there she was talking on the phone wearing her trousers. See, the rule said you don't wear trousers to special events. And guess what? Now, I would just go, you will. The rule for Jeannie and the relationship between Jeannie and her mother were such that this was deeply wounding. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Deeply wounding. Didn't measure up again. Didn't measure up again. Wore the trousers to Thanksgiving. So it depends on the rules that we buy into and the rules that we have in our environment, in our culture. Boy, I got to tell you, if one of you picked up your shoe and threw it at me, I would probably think it was really weird, probably a little rude, but I would not be highly offended. If I were in another culture and you picked up your shoe and you threw it at me and I came from a different perspective, I tell you what, it would be the biggest offense possible, because in certain cultures, showing the sole of the foot, the bottom of the shoe, is the most offensive thing you can do. See? The rules change depending on the circumstances. So what I know about this is that there are a lot of rules about what should and should not happen in life. And depending on our experience, our life experience, those rules are going to be different for each and every one of us. Every one of us. And we have our own rules for ourselves, for our world. And guess what? Like with Jeannie and the trousers, the rules that we have for ourselves determine the way we feel about our life experience. So if we've got a lot of rules, like Barney Fife, obey all the rules. Rule number 1, obey all the rules. If we've got that perspective, it's going to be a little bit difficult to go through life with a sense of well-being. Yes, yes. So the idea is we've got to be willing to take a look at the rules that we have for ourselves and for other people. And when the rules get violated, when Mom gets mad at us because we're wearing trousers to Thanksgiving, we've got to embrace those feelings and come at it with a perspective. Allow the feeling of disappointment, the feeling of maybe shame or guilt or frustration, whatever those feelings are, to move through us, but acknowledge that and question the rule. Question the rule. Do I really need this rule in my life anymore? Is it serving me? And if I don't, am I willing to forgive the offender? Am I willing to forgive the shoe thrower? Am I willing to forgive the person on the other end of the line that tells me trousers at Thanksgiving are inappropriate? Can I let that go? Can I move into a soft place with that? See the movie Moonstruck? One of the only things I remember from the movie Moonstruck is when Cher hits whoever that guy was it Nicolas Cage? She says, snap out of it. Snap out of it. Get over it. Okay, stop grumbling about all these offenses that have taken place, these times when people have not been loyal, when they have betrayed, whatever those things are. A lot of us have been there. We've all, had those experiences. Stop grumbling about it and accept reality as it is. Once we accept it as it is, we're at a choice point then for what do we do with it next. Yep, there it is. There it is. Now, I'm not telling you that forgiveness is easy. Like grief, forgiveness takes time. It has its own timeline. There's nothing that says, yep, I'm going to forgive today. Doesn't happen that way. But we can set an intention and open to the possibility of forgiveness within these insults of life, within these experiences. And by the way, sometimes we're harshest when we've broken our own rules, or rules that we have for ourselves. This is who I should be in life, and I'm not. This is how my life should be. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have made that investment. I shouldn't have gone down that path. I shouldn't. We make all these rules for ourselves, and then we beat ourselves up, and we're not forgiving ourselves and not accepting the reality of whatever that thing is. And this is really important to me. I come from a 12-step tradition, and there's a certain humble serenity that goes along with this acceptance of these things. The serenity prayer says, accept the things we can't change. So if someone has betrayed you, if they've said, don't wear those trousers, that's a reality. It's not going to change. Change what we can and know the difference, you see. And knowing the difference is where we open to the forgiveness. Just is as it is. I'm not going to be able to change it, but I can know the difference between what I can change and what I cannot change, and open into a space of forgiveness around that thing, whatever it is. And part of it is that it's very hard to embrace the changes that broken rules bring. It was really hard for me to embrace my new life as a divorced mother of two very energetic teenagers. That was a hard place to be with new rules. How do you do this? How do you work for the first time in your entire life when you've been very well taken care of? How do you do these things, you see? All of a sudden, I got to accept reality as it is, accept that thing, open to the change that the new rules are bringing about. And what I found out in my life over 68 years is this: there's no one single reliable rule about much of anything. How things are supposed to be and how they turn out kind of has a mind of its own. Did you notice? Have you noticed? And so this morning I'm going to be reading from one of the resources that we're using today, this entire month, the Sermon on the Mount. Emmett Fox. Those of you in 12-step know this is one of the very first books I ever encountered when I began the 12-step journey. Emmett Fox was an associate and a friend of Bill W.'s, big metaphysician, and a lot of the work of Emmett Fox informed the early people in the Alcoholics Anonymous tradition, deeply influenced by Emmett Fox. And this is what he says. He comes from a very Christian perspective, and so he's a great metaphysician and comes at it from a very mystical perspective. But this is what I want to tell you about this idea of no single rule applies to everything, right? He says, and this is interesting because as I read this, reread this, I thought, wow, some in more fundamental traditional religious belief systems could really use this paragraph. Jesus discouraged emphasis upon hard and fast rules and regulations of every kind. What he insisted on was a certain spirit in one's conduct, and he was careful to teach principles only, knowing that when the spirit is right, details will take care of themselves, and that the letter killeth, but the spirit giveth life. The rule, have you ever had a rule in your life that you knew you needed to bend a little bit for the better good of the whole? That's what this is talking about. This idea that there cannot be hard, fast rules for anything. We have to rely on the natural ethics of an experience, on our divinity, on our inner knowing, on the energy of the divine when we come into these experiences. Rely on that rather than the rule book. Rather than the rule book. The golden rule itself, the golden rule, do unto others, I got to tell you, has huge variety. Depends on the culture, your family, your society, the experience, what's going on, the religion you come from. Your golden rules are going to be different depending on your perspective. Do unto others. Well, like I mentioned, throwing a shoe is pretty insulting in some cultures. So what I want to move into now is this idea, like Glenda mentioned it, we got to get new rules for ourselves. We got to move into new ways of being with things so that we can actually open into the possibility of forgiveness, moving on, accepting what is going on, the reality of the moment, the isness. Let go of all the old rules that are getting in the way of our peace, getting in the way of our sense of well-being. Let go of the grievance story that's driving the energy of our upset so that we can open to the possibility of forgiveness in that experience, whatever that looks like. I love what our author says, forgive for good. We've got to accept the dark side of life. Those places where the rules have been broken and have caused us pain. so that we can open to the possibility for forgiveness and the activity of grace within that, so that we can return to our wholeness. So this dark side of life, these things that get in the way that are so darn painful. See, for me, my rules say people should be kind, they should be respectful, they should be honest, they should be sincere, they should be loyal. And it's not always the case. It's not always the case. Because my experience has shown me that some people abuse, some people betray, some people abandon, some people lie, some people are jealous, right? Some people die. That's against the rules. You died too soon. You died too soon. And when we create a grievance story around these unenforceable rules, we're going to suffer a lot. So I want to share with you one of my experiences of accepting the dark side of life, where the rules, my rules, most people's rules, would have been broken, and the journey through that. So I want to share this. And I've shared this before. I'm not going to share details of this experience, but I am going to share the generalities. When I went through my divorce with my children's father, I ended up having to find employment for the first time in my whole life. Never had worked, never had been in the work field, and I had an opportunity to become involved in a business with a friend of my father's, and this man took me in and became my mentor, and I highly respected him. I trusted him. I had a great deal of respect for him. There were lots of promises about grooming me to go into fabulous something or other, right? And then the dark side hit. The dark side hit. All the rules got broken. All the rules got broken. It was about betrayal, it was about abuse, it was about deceit, it was about fear, and it was about rape. Then it became about a legal process, it became about attorneys, it became about expert witnesses, it became about being a victim, it became about visiting experts for a psychological profile to see how damaged I really had become in this experience through this post-traumatic stress. And this is the part I want to tell you, because this is the gift of the experience. And I want to tell you, these things take time. I had to be interviewed by an expert witness to determine how nutty I really had become. Suicidal, anorexic, all these things, right? And he said to me, I'm not your therapist, but I need to stop this process right now, and I want to tell you something. Until you can see this man as a really sick individual and move into forgiveness, you will never be healed. You will never be healed. And I said, not in this lifetime. Not in this lifetime. And I believed it. But that seed had been planted. Oh, you could forgive somebody in a situation like this? Not consciously, subconsciously. And so what I learned about this was, he was right. What I learned about this is, something happened. It took some time. I didn't say, I'm going to forgive this. I never focused on forgiveness, because I was never going to do that in this lifetime. But something happened, and all of a sudden, one day, I felt the shift. I felt the grace. I felt the descent of energy that was the divinity of the experience informing me that I didn't have to carry this grievance story anymore. Yes, it's part of my experience. Thank God it was over. And thank you, God, that I can move through my life without that grievance story holding me back. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? I can take my power back, because I've got to tell you, I was almost in a fetal position, suicidal, anorexic, could hardly get out of bed. I was a mess. Not everybody knew that, because I'm a really good actress. Not everybody knew that. And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell a soul this was happening. Nobody knew. See, till it was over. Till I finally found an attorney I could trust. See. I took my power back, and I learned it is possible to forgive, even in something really dark. I learned that I can open to grace and let that grace flow through. So here's the invitation. If you're feeling in your life experience like somebody's not bringing you the flowers that you would like to have, if life's not giving you your flowers, right? If life's not telling you, I love you anymore, if you've got a grievance story that's holding you back, you have the power to make a new rule for yourself. You have the power to give yourself and everyone else the flowers of this forgiveness, this willingness to open to the grace of forgiveness, to learn to forgive, to open to that experience, so that you can move through your life then with a sense of wholeness, with a sense of completeness, without all of that icky stuff getting in the way. New rules, and new rules always include the willingness and the openness to forgiveness. And it takes time. It does it in its own time, but you have to set the intention. Thank you for listening.